for tuning in. Today I'm doing something completely different. I am not pouring resin today. I think most of my videos, if not all of them, have been resin. But I also do a lot of work with concrete. I just don't film it. It's not as interesting. At least I don't think so. But I see a lot of videos out there from makers that use Jesmonite. So a while back, I bought some Jesmonite. I gave it a try. I really liked it. It's very similar to the concrete that I use. I use a white, really fine concrete. But what I didn't like about the Jesmonite was you have to use the liquid that comes with the Jesmonite. You can't just use water. So I went back to using my concrete, and then I saw something on probably Instagram that was similar to Jesmonite, but it uses water. So let me grab the bag here. The bag is open and I don't want to spill it because I will spill it. I'll try to hold it. This Eco Pour, and it says in big letters, just add water. So I purchased this, I'm in the US, but I purchased this from Just For You Online UK. I don't know if this is their product and you can't get it anywhere else, or if they're just a reseller. I don't really know, but I couldn't find it in the US, so I had to order it from overseas. And of course, shipping was astronomical because this weighs a lot. This is a 3 kilogram bag. The mix ratio is 100 to 35, so that means 100 grams of powder to 35 grams of water, and that's by weight. Grams is a weight measurement. I know us in the US, we're used to pounds and ounces can be weight or liquid, quantity. So I had to do some conversion to figure out exactly how much I need. This is what I'm making. This is a candle holder. I also got this mold from Just For You Online UK. It holds a little tea light, and I wanted to make this out of concrete or this Eco Pour, something like that. I didn't want to make it out of resin because I want to put a real candle in it, and you cannot or should not use real flame with resin just because of how heat sensitive it is. So I thought, well, let's give this a try. So this takes 38 ounces of water. I poured water in here, measured it out, which is what I would normally do for resin. Now, when I'm working with concrete and I do the same thing, I find that it takes a little bit more. So what they tell you to do with concrete is, if it takes 38 ounces of water, they say take 38 ounces, measurement ounces, of powder and add your water, and that should be enough. And it's usually not enough. I usually have to add more. So if this is 38 ounces, what I would normally do if this was concrete is I would make this 42 ounces of concrete powder and then mix in my water. So I'm treating this the same way, at least to start with. So I have measured out 42 ounces of the powder, and it's in these little containers. They're marked with ounces. So this is ounces by volume, not ounces by weight. I measured this out on the scale so I could figure out how much this actually weighs in grams. And it was 750 grams approximately. So then I did the math, the 100 to 35 ratio, did that, and then I was able to figure out how much water I needed. So I've got my water here, powder here. I am going to be doing this in 2 different colors. That's why I have 2 separate things of powder. I want to try and make the bottom a different color than the top. We'll see how it works. With concrete, it's pretty easy to do like a split pour, where you can like pour together, and where they meet, they stay pretty defined, whereas resin will kind of blend. Concrete doesn't really blend with itself unless you stir it. So I'm hoping that this works the same way. Now, these little containers, these are pretty full. There's no way I'm going to be able to mix in here with the water. So I have a larger container. I have my bucket. Move this out of the way. So I'm gonna mix in here. The color I'm using today is the Armor Art in turquoise. So for the bottom, I'm gonna try and do like a solid turquoise, and then the top, I wanna do a marbled white and turquoise. So we'll see how that goes. So I'm gonna take my first batch of powder and put it in the bucket. And whenever you're pouring powder, try and do it slowly, because otherwise it'll just poof up. That's one of the drawbacks of working with powdered product is the dust. And then I have my water here. So I'm treating this the way I would treat concrete, which may not be correct. I might be doing this totally wrong. When I'm mixing concrete, if I'm using a liquid pigment, I mix it into the water. If I'm using a powdered pigment, I mix it into the powder first before I combine the two. So this is a liquid pigment. So I'm going to put it in the water. One thing to keep in mind with Jesmonite or white concrete, and I'm assuming this has the same challenge. Wow, this is really, let me get something that's not as solid. I'm just going to grab some paint. Let's see here. All right, so I'm just going to use some acrylic paint. And I know for sure that's water soluble. But anyways, the challenge when you're using a white powder is it's white. And when you mix white with a color, you get a pastel. So I have found with concrete and with the Jesmonite, it's really hard to get that nice, super vibrant color that you might want. Like if you want to do like black or navy blue or a rich Christmas red, it's just not as easy to do with these white powders. And I know there are tons and tons of other pigments out there, and maybe some of them are better at that. I don't know. I haven't really experimented much with pigments with my concrete work because I just don't do as much of it as I do resin. So that's definitely something to explore. So I'm just mixing the paint into the water here. And I am using a silicone spatula. I find these are much easier to get the dried concrete off of. You just kind of bend it and it flakes right off. Same thing with these mixing cups and this bucket. If you wait until it dries, you can crack it and it just pops right off. You don't want to rinse these out and down your drain, because the concrete or Jesmonite or whatever it is will solidify. Even though it's very diluted, it will still solidify in your drains. So you're gonna be really careful not to do that. So that's why I just wait till it dries. All right, so I'm just pouring a little bit in at a time. And this is how I do it with concrete. I don't know if this is the best way to do it with this stuff, but we'll see. So yeah, you can see the color is really light blue compared to the water. I have also found when you're mixing this type of a thing with the powder and the water or liquid, it's easier to do it if you have a wide container versus a tall, skinny container. So I would rather use like, I don't know, like a baking dish almost, rather than my typical mixing cups that are used for resin, or these taller cups. Because the flatter the bottom, or the bigger the bottom, the more surface area. It's just easier to mix, I find, with these powders. So you want to make sure you get all the lumps out. Stir it till there's no more lumps in there. I don't know if you could use like a an electric mixer, possibly. I've never have. I always do it by hand because just like with resin, it's real easy to get bubbles in this, and then you end up with the same issues you have with resin. You end up with voids in your product. You end up with pock marks on the mold side. So you don't want to go too crazy with your mixing. I'm going to try and keep the bubbles to a minimum. Now this product, it says you can demold it in 2 hours. So it doesn't have the longest work time. So when you pour your water in, you want to make sure you're ready to go. Okay, so I think that's pretty nice. If I wanted this darker, I could maybe add some more paint to it. But I have found that it takes a lot of pigment, a lot of colorant to get a nice deep color. And then sometimes that will affect the curing. Okay, so now for my marbled, I want to do a marbled white and this blue. So I'm going to take half of this, approximately, put it in another container. Now, that's a little more than half. That's okay. So I'm going to use the one that has the more powder. This will be my white, and then this will be my blue. Now, I don't have any more buckets, so I'm going to have to mix inside of these. So it's going to be a little challenging. All right, so let me measure out my water for these guys. So grab my scale. And it shut off, so let me turn it back on. I don't know if this is all still in frame. All right, so I have it set on grams. I'm going to weigh the container. It's the same container because I want to zero it out. Zero that out. Okay, so this has 288 grams. So 288 divided by 100 is 2.8. 2.8 times 35. Okay, so sorry, I had to do some math. I needed my phone. So 98 grams of water is what I need for this container. So I'm going to put this on here, zero it out. And we want 98. Oop, too much. And I don't know how much leeway there is with this. With concrete, you can kind of, all right, 99, that's good enough. With concrete, you can kind of, you don't have to be exact. But I don't know how sensitive this product is to exact color matches. I'm just gonna use this because I don't want to get my other spoon blue. So this is going to be more challenging to mix up because it's in this small little container. But I'm just going to pull it away from the sides and let that liquid get down all the way to the bottom. So you can see this is definitely harder to do. This is why I like that bigger container. And then I'm tilting the cup because I want to be able to see the bottom. I want to make sure there's no powder caked on the bottom. All right, let's clean off the spatula. Back in there. All right, now I need to do the white. All right, so now to marbleize this, I'm gonna pour the blue into the white. These spatulas are so awesome for just scraping. You can get almost every drop out of your container. All right, and then I'm just going to lightly mix it, but not mix it all the way. All right, so I got my two colors. So one thing, it seems like this is, this also happens with concrete. When it sits for a minute, some of the water seems to kind of rise up to the top. And that's not a big deal, you just have to stir it again. All right, so I'm gonna clear this away and grab my mold. Okay, so before you do that, this is really awkward to pour, this giant bucket. So I'm gonna put some of it into this container with a spout. Maybe I can get all of it in there. Let's see, I should be able to. It's the same as the other one. This is such a pretty color. It's definitely more on the pastel side, but I still like it. Okay. All right, so these are much easier to pour. That's why I have these ones with the spouts. All right, grab my mold. All right, so I want the bottom to be the blue. And I'm gonna take the spatulas out, at least to start with. I'll bring them back at the end when I wanna scrape the containers out, but it's gonna be too hard to pour with the spatula in the way. Okay, I'm gonna just start with this down here. It's like trying to pour ice cream. There's a hair in it. Eek. All right. So one thing, this is definitely harder to pour than my concrete because it's thicker. When I work with concrete, it's not this thick. But like I said, with the concrete, I can add more water than you know, the instructions say, and it still cures really good. It just makes it easier to pour. I'm gonna play around with this product and see, is it flexible with the water, you know, to some degree, like the concrete is, and if so, that would make it easier to pour if I could put a little more water in here. 'Cause yeah, this is definitely hard to pour out. Seems like the marble side is pouring more smoothly, so maybe I did add a little more water to that. I don't know. All right, so I'm just gonna, so this is similar to concrete. It's very easy to just manipulate it, get it to lay flat, which is nice. I did mix up the blue side sooner, so maybe it's thickening up a little bit too. getting there. Looks like I'm gonna have a decent amount left over, so that's a good thing to know. Like I said, with the concrete, it ends up being more than what the mold measures out to. This seems to be closer. I'm making a mess here too. All right, so I have quite a bit left. I'm really surprised. I actually have, just going by ounces, I probably have about 10 ounces left over. So that is interesting that this yields a little bit more than what you measure out. All right, so I'm just gonna use my little baby wipe here. I'm gonna try and clean this up a little. Unlike resin, you can't really, well, I shouldn't say you can't sand. Again, I don't know, I haven't used this product. It's hard to sand concrete. You can do it, but you have to do it early enough. You can't wait until it's fully cured. Jesmonite is easier to sand than the concrete. I don't know how this product is gonna be, but I'm just trying to clean up my edges to minimize the sanding that I'm gonna have to do. And obviously I have too much in this mold. I'm gonna grab my little spoon and maybe take a little bit out. I'll take a little bit of this out. Okay, looks like it's just about level with the top. Okay, so now the candle holder, I can see poking out a little bit. So I am gonna probably wanna add just a smidge more to this, but I wanna get the air bubbles out first because air takes up room in the mold. So the more air I can get to raise it to the top, the more this is gonna sink down, and then I'll have more room to add. So you're gonna laugh. I know you're gonna laugh. Everyone's gonna laugh. This is what I use when I do my concrete work to get the air bubbles out. And you'll see the bubbles rising up to the top here. All right, so you can see bubbles. Let's pop the bigger ones here. All right, now the bubbles that are coming up to the top. So with concrete, I've tried using my heat gun, and what ends up happening is it actually instantly cures the top of the bubble. So then you have a very nicely cured bubble. So I don't want to try using heat because I don't want that to happen here. So I'm just going to try and kind of pop the bubbles. Just trying to bounce my tray a little. I know that there's a lot of concrete workers use vibrating tables. I have not invested in one yet. I'm gonna see what this will do. I might regret this. Okay. Not bad. At least the bubbles popped. All right, so I'm just gonna leave this alone. I'm gonna let it all cure. And we'll come back and demold. I'm pretty excited because it says it demolds in 2 hours. So we'll see if that's the case. We'll see how, like what the bubble situation ends up looking like. And if I can sand it, if the surface is rough. So I'll see you in a couple hours. All right, it's been 2 hours. This stuff is still, I'm not gonna say it's hot, but it's warm. So I think it's still curing, but it's rock hard. So I am gonna demold it because I'm really curious what it looks like. Before I do that, I just wanted to show you what I said earlier about getting that out of your containers. So this is just parchment paper down here. I'm just gonna move all this out of the way. So here is the spatula. It all just crumbles right off. Super easy. And same thing with the container. Just squeeze it a little bit and just look at that. So this is how I would recommend cleaning if you do concrete, Jesmonite, and apparently it works great with this stuff too. Instead of just trying to rinse everything out. That just makes a huge mess, and then you got to worry about your drains. So, all right. So let's start with these little guys. And I am going to try and sand the backs of these after I take them out. They're not super rough, but I would definitely want to smooth them out. All right. Came out of the mold real easily. There's a little overflow. It's very, very shiny. I'm not gonna say shiny, but it's not dull. So it did pick up the shine from the mold. Resin is shinier for sure, but this has got a nice sheen to it. There are some bubbles around the edges. So I wonder if I use the same technique with my dotting tool, if that would work with this to prevent those edge bubbles. All right, this is the marbleized one. All right, same thing, nice shine to it, a few bubbles around the edges. Let me grab, hold on one second. Grab a file real quick. All right, this is just a nail file. I'm just curious. Oh yeah, it's easy to sand. Yeah, look at that. Super easy. Now, I don't know. I'm assuming if I let this sit for a longer period of time and keep curing, this is probably going to get harder and maybe more difficult to sand. That's how the Jesmonite and the concrete are. You have to do your sanding pretty early. You can't let it completely cure to where it's rock hard, because then it's like sanding concrete. It's not as easy. But I don't know if this stuff will get as hard as the concrete and the Jesmonite. I would assume it does, but we'll find out. I'll give it a couple days and then I'll try sanding it again, see what happens. But yeah, this is working pretty well. Just trying to even the edges out. And it's not, if you do this to resin, you get like a dull edge. this stuff isn't shiny enough, so the dull edge isn't really happening. Because it's not super glossy, so you can't really tell that it was sanded, other than obviously it's not straight. All right, so that's cool. So I'll go ahead and sand that one too after I'm done. All right, so this guy, this thing weighs a ton. It's loosening up the mold. Oh, that's pretty. Still got some bubbles around the edges, but not bad at all. There are a couple spots where maybe I didn't have it mixed perfectly, because there are some spots where it looks like there's some powder sitting. Well, that turned out really good. I'm really happy with this. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and sand all these down, and I will put some pictures up on my Instagram if you want to see the finished products. So, all right, so I would say that this product, this Eco Pour, I'm going to give it 4.5 stars. The only reason I wouldn't give it 5 stars is it has the same problem that I think concrete and Jesmonite have, and that is the bubble release. And it's not like resin where you can let it sit and give it time and let the bubbles rise before you pour it. This stuff cures so fast you have to pour it right away. So this is always a problem, in my opinion, with these types of products. So if this wasn't here, I would say this would be a 5-star thing. But compared to Jesmonite, I like it better because you don't have to use their liquid. You could just use water. Compared to concrete, I like the finish better than concrete. The concrete I use is really fine. It's a fine casting concrete, and you can get like a sheen like this. But this is smoother, I think, than the concrete. So I do like that. So I will definitely be using this again. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this little side trip away from resin land. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do any more videos with this stuff or with concrete. I'd be happy to if you guys are interested. So, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Take care.